Hello friends, this is Dr. Ravi Ram, your EIS coach. We have completed the sessions on chapter 1 in EIS. Chapter 2 is about financial and accounting systems. We will follow the similar methodology. We will use ICAI material as the primary in terms of reference for the sessions. Along with that, we will have CHAMPS material also. So the basic prerequisite for you is we should have a notebook in our hand. We should note down the points. What are the points we should note down? Whatever you would like to note down, that is a general thumb rule. On top of it, whenever I say you have to write a particular bullet point, without miss, try to write it so that will be useful to you at a later point in time as an index, as a reference point. Okay, so follow the instructions accordingly. Try to note down and follow the session both from ICAI material as well as CHAMPS material standpoint. After that, once the sessions are over, review the sessions again, go through the content of the session by reading and studying the ICAI material and referring to CHAMPS material also. Accordingly, your preparation should be done parallelly. Don't postpone the preparation, because when our memory is fresh, preparation should be started and completed. That's the reason why a parallel preparation we should begin. Don't think that once the sessions are done, all sessions are complete, then I will complete or then I will start the preparation. No. It cannot happen. Why? Because our memory may not be fresh. Our references in ICAI material as well as CHAMPS material may not be fresh. We may forget some of the technical terms. We may forget the methodology, the topics. Hence, prepare parallelly while the sessions are going on, while you get the session as a link or maybe a face-to-face. The same day you try to complete the preparation. Don't postpone it. Especially this applies to enterprise information systems as well as strategic management. Why? These are the subjects which are a little above our head. We can understand this, but lot of terminology, situations, cases and illustrations would be a little above our head. That means what? Since we did not work anywhere in the organizations, our common sense may be useful to understand the subject, but preparation will add more authenticity to the memory. So don't postpone the preparation. That is the end of the story for that. Okay. So don't miss the preparation for chapter 1. Let us move to chapter 2. What is chapter 2? Financial and accounting systems. Have you heard about this word any time earlier? Financial and accounting. In organizations, generally finance and accounting positions, job positions are called F and A. Most of us, once we complete chartered accountancy, we will be working on finance and accounting systems. So, what are these financial and accounting systems? The basic accounting, how it happens, we know, because you are the experts of accounting already. In foundation, probably in your +1, +2 and then foundation and then CA Inter Group 1, now advanced accounting in Group 2 and final again accounting applications. Lot of accounting principles you are learning, but how these principles are used in the computerized world, those are called systems. I believe in the first chapter we discussed about those. What is a system? So accounting systems as well as financial systems. I want to remind you again, we are the users of the technology. We are not the designers of the technology. But what are we? We are the designers of the processes. We should understand the processes. We should know how the flow happens. So in this chapter we will discuss more and more about financial and accounting systems, how the finance and accounting departments of organizations use various systems, general knowledge in terms of integrated and non-integrated systems, and what are the various business process modules and their integration with financial and accounting system, meaning varieties of other business processes like sales, like marketing, like HR. How do they have interaction? What is their integration? We will understand about that. And some reporting systems and management information systems. Reporting systems are what type of reports we have to send, how it is at a high level. More you will be learning on the financial reporting in final. There is a separate subject called FR, financial reporting. And of course, from any organization, there is something called management information system, where what information management requires. So we'll look into that. This concept may be new to you. The next one, data analytics and business intelligence, how the data gets gathered, how intelligently businesses take their decisions. Like we mentioned, most of the businesses are now system centric or process centric than person centric. So to take decisions also, it is not only the intelligence of the persons anymore. It is the intelligence that we can analyze not as a human being but systems analyze through data analysis, which is called data analytics, and business information, business intelligence. We will discuss a little more as the topic comes. And then we are going to discuss on business reporting and fundamentals of, there is a concept called XBRL. Probably for most of us it is totally new. Just like HTML for internet, XBRL is for accounting. Most of the international firms, while they communicate among them in terms of business reporting, for example, annual balance sheet, when I have to transmit my balance sheet from India to US, what standards I should use. So there is a accounting programming language called XBRL. Don't worry, we are not going to learn the programming of XBRL. I mentioned you already, right? We are not software developers. We are not software programmers. We are not software architects. We are not software designers. But who are we? We are the users of the software. So what types of software is available in business reporting, and some technical at a high level, how the extended business language works, which is mostly accounting from global perspective. So all big four organizations, when they try to do their accounting, they use XBRL in their accounting applications. So we will have certain brief discussion about that. And finally, applicable regulatory and compliance requirements, just like in first chapter, mostly about the legal requirements. How is Information Technology Act, IT Act 2000 and amendments of 2013, more legal stuff. So this particular section of the overall chapter would be for your preparation mostly. There is nothing much to explain. It is mostly self-explanatory, the legal part, the law part. Okay, but all the rest we are going to go deep and understand what is integration, what is integrated system, how non-integrated systems are, and so on and so forth. Okay. So what is the purpose of this chapter? It is meant for providing an insight. That's all. It is not about getting expertise. We are not going to becoming experts. It is just a glimpse of it, an insight into what financial and accounting systems, it's how it works, auditing, how audit works, and its use for business management and development, how it works. So financial systems, F and A, financial and accounting systems, they are integral part of any business, of course. Those are the backbone for it, because we have to use the reporting. How can we show the health of an organization to stakeholders in let us say SEBI or share market? By reporting. How do we report? By understanding the financial and accounting systems, right? So what is a system? What is ERP? We'll come through now that. We'll definitely look at that. Okay. This is a classic diagram. Every system, let us say if an elephant is a system, every department may look at different parts of that. So let us say this elephant is an organization. Maybe sales may think that they will touch and feel the trunk and say they may say it is a snake. Or someone else may look at the tusk and say it is a spear. Someone else may look at the ears and they may say it is a fan, as an example. That means organization is same, but it has various departments. Every department may have its own interpretation of the business. Someone is touching the tail and they say, oh, it's a rope. So the way each department works and understands an organization is different. That is the idea. So different perspectives of the same view through different professionals. Sales professionals may think in certain ways because they have their own targets. Marketing may have to work in some way. Finance has to work in some way. HR has to work in some way. Administration may work in some other way. Maybe some other department like R&D may have to work in some other way. Organization is same. All the body parts are part of the organization. All these departments are the same organization until unless they work together. What is that working together in business terminology called integrated way of working? That's it. What is integrated way of working? When there is a communication among these various functions of an organization, that is called integrated way of working. So everyone has their own views. Accountants may have some view. They will always focus on balance sheet, profit and loss and all that. Auditors, they will look at that, but they look at accuracy, correctness and other details of the audit. Owners, they need right information. So mostly for them, reports are really important. For what? To take decisions at an appropriate, correct time. So because of this, every department has their own priorities. Every department or function has their own perspectives, but still they have to work for the common goal. What is that goal? According to the vision and mission of the organizations. Who sets the vision and mission? Executive management, which is nothing but board of directors or the key stakeholders of the organization. So what is the job of our financial and accounting system as financial professionals? To cater, this is just an information, so you don't have to by heart or anything, to cater to the needs of all users simultaneously. Who are all the users? Whoever uses our reports, whoever uses our financial and accounting reports. So who uses our reports? Senior management use it for further decision making. Each department may use it for its improvement or applause. If the company is publicly listed, shareholders may have to look at it. Stock market owners or exchange boards of particular country, which are the monitoring and regulatory agencies like SEBI, they have to look at it. Government may have to look at sometimes. So responsibility of financial and accounting systems is very, very crucial. Any falsification of data, any data misinterpretation with a maleficent intention, means malicious intention. What does it mean? Some cooked up story like how Satyam did. Maybe some wrong thing like earlier various organizations like Enron. Have you heard about those? Anderson Consulting and some of the other international, including KPMG. KPMG had a certain punishments from ICAI and others also because they misrepresented the data. So financial and accounting systems, that's the reason why it is very, very, very important to be accurate, and users will look at the data, different possible angles. Alright, so that's the reason why we have to understand what is a system. System is nothing but, I think in the beginning of the chapter yesterday we have seen, yesterday means previous sessions, we have seen what is a system. System is a set of detailed methods, procedures and routines. Routines are nothing but day-to-day processes created to what? For carrying out a specific activity. Marketing, sales, HR, again the same specific activity. To perform a duty, administration, security, information technology, or solve a problem. So many methods of a system with an integration, they have to work together. Okay, system doesn't mean it is only a computer. Okay, in a normal sense we use computer, but what is system? System is all this we need to understand. When someone says, oh, I have a system or I have an application, these are all the things, especially for organization. Okay, so this is what exactly the definition is. So system may or may not be related with computer at all. It is set of things working together. This also is the definition. Set of things working together as parts of mechanism or interconnecting network, a complex whole. That means varieties of small parts working for it. Is human body a system? Yes. Different parts work for the same thing. What is that? What is the objective of a human body from a physical standpoint? To live. So all organs should be healthy to live. Simple. What is the vision of a system, human body system? So that it will live without any health issues. As simple as that. So like that. System can be explained in a simple way. Like same thing is explained in multiple. See, ICAI is very ambitious. I am going to use this word again and again. It takes the material from various different reference books. So all systems, I think yesterday we have looked upon inputs, outputs and feedback. They maintain an internal steady state despite changing external environment. Lot of internal processes are very matured. They have boundaries that are usually defined by the system observer. Every system has a boundary. For example, we want to book a film ticket in Book My Show. Okay. Can I buy maybe chicken biryani there in Book My Show? As of now, there is no scope for that. So their boundary as of now is to book tickets for what? Various shows, movies, different other shows like that. Earlier, Swiggy used to have a boundary for what? Only delivery of food. But now they have extended. Now it became a courier service also. I don't know whether you know it or not. You can send various packages through Swiggy. You can book like an internal packaging courier service. That's how Swiggy is working. So earlier the boundary for the Swiggy system was to book only the food. Now it has expanded to somewhere else. So like that, every system has a boundary, and systems will have subsystems. Like sales may have some other subsystem inside. HR may have 6 or 7 subsystems like recruitment, performance appraisal, a feedback mechanism, termination, like that. 6 or 7 subsystems. Finance systems, auditing, accounting, taxation, treasury management, investment management, merchant banking. These are all subsystems of finance. Like that, systems may have subsystems. Exactly. There is an example about human body, so you can just read that. Okay, general information. So in this chapter, we are going to discuss about system for business, finance, and accounting. What are all the systems? So a system includes defined methods. Again, they explain the same thing. What is a process? Process is defined as a sequence of events, step-by-step events that use input and produce outputs. I think IPO, input is a raw material, process is set of steps. Think about any system, any process, and then what is the input for that? What are the steps inside the process? For what? So that the output is produced. So like this, process is set or sequence of events. There must be a sequence. Process cannot be haphazard. Process cannot run according to its own whims and fancies. That means process has to be structured. Every system has a process. Think about withdrawing money from ATM. ATM is a physical device. So what are the steps? There must be an input. What is the input to the ATM? Our details as a user. Once the user details are taken, what is the process? Verification with the account. Where is that account detail? Somewhere in a cloud service. So ATM is connected to that server. It will verify the user ID or a PIN or whatever. It authorizes the card details, and then it will ask us, it will throw a message to us. That is a process. That message may be two types. One, if it is valid, it's okay, and it will ask for how much amount or what transaction type. Two, if it is not valid, invalid user ID or invalid PIN, it will say. So that is process. What is the output? In case of invalidity, the screen itself is showing that PIN is wrong. That is an output. If the PIN is right, then choose an option is an output. Like that, any process is nothing but accepts the inputs, uses the sequence of steps, and produces the output. So this is how any system can be understood. Input gets taken by the process, gets processed there by sequence of events, and the output activity happens. So this is how we can look at it. From a business perspective, process is again a coordinated and standardized flow of activities. For what? Performed by people or machines. It can be anywhere. People can, sometimes it is manual, machines it is automated, which can traverse functional or departmental boundaries, which can go from sales to marketing to HR to procurement to different places, and then ultimately process is achieved through a business objective, and it creates value for internal or external customers. What is that value? Ultimately the product is generated, ultimately a process is complete, ultimately customer is happy. Those are all the value. If you really look at all the systems around us, automated systems, those are all to provide a value to the customer. Think about a two-wheeler. Two-wheeler runs based on a process. It takes an input, which is the fuel, which has a design, which is the process, and according to that it will take an give an output. Could be speed, or could be light, could be horn, which is sound, could be whatever. Output may be multiple, and ultimately what is it providing? It creates a value for customers. In this case, who is the customer? Internal or external? We are the external customers. Who are the internal customers? The designers of that bike. So this is how the process can be understood at a high level. So you don't have to by heart this, but just try to understand what is a system, what is a process in a more detailed way. System means interrelated applications, interrelated subsystems working together for achieving a business goal. What is a process? Process is nothing but sequence of events to use input and produce output. Sequence of events to use input and produce outputs. Okay? Yeah. Again, little more explanation about types of data. I think in the first chapter itself we discussed every accounting system stores data in two ways. One is master data, second is non-master data. So data is categorized into two different categories. Types of data is in two different categories. One, master data, which is relatively permanent data that is not expected to change frequently. That means like our name or address or other numbers like Aadhaar number or passport number or something like that, which are relatively permanent data. What is non-master data? Non-master data is mostly transactional data which expects to change frequently. So as an example, it has given master data may have accounting data master, inventory as an example, payroll, statutory master data also is possible. Some examples are given. This can be asked as a question. Explain or give an example or give the two examples for master data. So you can pick and choose one of this. What is accounting master data? Again, we talked about it. Capital ledger, for example, is created once and not expected to change frequently, is it not? Other ledgers like sales, purchase, expenses, income, they're all created once and not expected to change again and again. So these are permanent data, master data. Opening balance carried forward from previous year to next year is also master data. It doesn't change. Why? Once the end of the year, which carries to the next year, does it change? No, it is permanent. But on the the total balance from yesterday to today, it will change. So like that. Similarly, inventory master data like stock items, stock groups, go downs, inventory voucher types. Types may not change, may be added, a new one may be added, but time may not change multiple times. Like bought and sold for business purpose, like trading goods. If a person is into business of dealing in white goods, stock items, that will be that shall be like television, fridge, air, and all that. So medicine shop, medicines, these are like permanent master data. They don't change every day. Amounts may change, quantities may change, but the actual data which is there, the names of the inventory head will not change. Similarly, similar examples. Payroll master data. Payroll is a system for calculating salary and recording of transactions related to employees. It cannot change. So frequently the data will not change. Employee created in the system will remain as it is for a longer period of time until employee is terminated. Till then it will be there. Would there be change in the salary? Not every day, not every month. Whenever there is a promotion, whenever there is a change in the salary, then only it changes. Hence, it is a permanent data, master data, but it is not totally permanent. But still it is considered as master data. Why? Because it doesn't change frequently. Okay. Similarly, what is statutory master data? Oh, these are like GST amounts, like nature of payments under tax deduction source, TDS, tax collected at source. So this is relatively permanent per year, doesn't change much. We don't have any control on this data because let us say last year as your company has posted EBIT of 1 crore, for example, earnings before income tax, this and all of that, and finally based on that the TDS amount you have to pay something. Would it change? No, it is permanent. Once you enter that into the system, it is permanent, it doesn't change. So it is statutory master data, like tax rates. Unless the government changes the tax rates, it doesn't change. Forms, categories, these things are master data as example. So all business process modules should use common master data. That means according to the department we will have various master data, but once we are using one format or one methodology in one unit, like statutory or payroll, the same thing should carry on. For example, if the if the date of birth of a person is so and so, and in payroll also the date of birth should be in the similar format. In HR also it should be the same. It should, the employee master also it should be the same, like that. Common master data. Then there is second category, right? Non-master data. What is non-master data? So if you look at the slide also, the same thing is depicted here. What is non-master data? Non-master data is expected to change more frequently, again and again and again, and it is not a permanent data. Mostly what? Transactional data. Transactional data like amounts, dates. Yesterday's date is yesterday's date. Today's date is today's date. So like that, it changes. Okay, it is not constant. So to understand the concept of master and non-master, so some example like personal master data, name of the parents, address, blood group. You can just, these are the examples. I think you understand the concept, so you can devise. If I give a question and give like 10 data items, identify which is master data and which is non-master data. I hope you can identify by now. If some data is relatively permanent, it is master data. If it is not so permanent, it is non-master data. Like date of birth is a master data, but age is not a master data because every year age will change. That is a beauty of it. Date of birth doesn't change, but age changes. So based on the master data which is permanent, non-master data can change. So weight, of course weight may change. During COVID-19 times probably our weight is more. But once we really work regularly and we'll resume with our day-to-day duties of going and getting onto the buses or trains and getting down, walking, running, maybe our weight may get down. We may lose some weight. So weight, is it master data or non-master data? Non-master data. Like our likes, dislikes. Don't think that these are master data. Okay, our likes may change. What we liked in 9th standard may not be the same now. What we like now may not be the same after 2 years. Okay, we may have an idea in general, but likes may change. So non-master data. So that's why these are all non-master data. So personal master data is an example. Non-master data is at a personal level also is explained as example. Why there must be these things? So the basic objective of accounting system is to record. What is the objective of accounting system? What does accounting do? Accounting does what? To record input in the form of transactions and generate output in the form of reports. That is the objective of accounting. What is a report? Maybe annual balance sheet, or maybe cash flow statement, or maybe income statement. There are 100 up to number of reports, but for most of them, what is the input? The transaction data. So accounting does all that actually dirty work. No offense, please don't take any offense there, but accounting is actually it's like sweeper's work. We have to record the transactions, we have to understand which bucket it has to be recorded, which head it has to be booked, and ultimately it has to balance both on the left hand side and right hand side. LHS should be equal to RHS. Of course, that is a balancing of an accounting situation. So lot of manual entry, lot of details which are nothing but record input in terms of transactional data, purchase orders, invoices, X, Y, Z, so many transactions. So simple transaction, look at it. So let us say in cash there is a business 1 lakh. Transactions recorded like this: cash to capital narration. This may be the receipt number 1. So credit definitely, and debit also it is there. So above information is stored in accounting system in 2 ways: in the form of master data and transaction data, which is example. Master data, voucher type is master data. We don't change voucher type every day. In this case it is receipt voucher. Debit ledger name, credit ledger name, naturally. What is the non-master data? Voucher number. It will change, right? It will increment one by one and it has to be in sequence. And debit ledger amount, credit ledger amount, date, narration, these things will change. But non-master data will change. Master data is generally permanent. Permanent. So this is how. That's why we can understand master data is generally not typed by the user. Not typed by the user, so that as a user we cannot have any control on master data. We have to use the existing system. It will be selected in the available, that is like debit ledger name and all that, we will select it. So master data entry is usually done less frequently, naturally, right? Once a year, some reconciliation happens, any new buckets we have to add, new heads we have to add, something like that. For example, if prices are contracted with vendors after deliberations and agreed prices are updated in the vendor master when new prices are negotiated. Let us say for now, for 2020-21, we used, let us say, sand per bag is 400 rupees. As an example I am telling, or cement per bag is 500 rupees. But vendors, we have negotiated that and updated the database. Let us say we are civil construction company and our inventory database has cement bag per bag, the cost, and the cost won't change every day, but as construction company we thought the cement cost is getting high, so since we have been using the same vendor, we can negotiate with them. So 2021-22 financial year, meaning next year, the cement price we may change the price after negotiation, after deliberation. Instead of 500 it may come to 350, as an example I am telling. Generally it doesn't happen. So what is the master data there? 1, bag type, which is cement. 2, amount of cement bag. Amount for cement bag weight for 100 kg. Earlier in 2020-21 it is permanent data like 500 rupees. In 21-22 also it is permanent data, but it got changed. So once a year maybe it changed. So it is it master data or permanent non-master data? It is master data. Okay. How many bags are delivered today? Is it master data or transactional data? Naturally, it's a transaction which is a non-master, relatively less permanent. Okay, that's how we have to understand. So non-master data is typed by the user, not selected from available list, as it is a non-permanent. Of course, master data user cannot type. Non-master data user can type, because transaction, right? That's what we are going to do in our article shape, especially the first year, or at least for the first 6 months. Mostly we will be entering all the voucher names, voucher types, varieties of. So mostly the basics of accounting, the input, data input, almost like data entry, but that is the most important job. Because without record information, how can we compute and balance the accounting transactions for clients? So that is non-master data, whatever we are trying to type. Okay. Sometimes transactional data also may be there, like GRN, group, goods receipt note. Sometimes they may be already there. So it is not a hard and fast rule that non-master data is always typed. It can be sometimes dropped down also. Of course, very rarely. So master data is selected from the above list of masters, definitely, like ledgers, what type of ledger and all that. All cash transactions are collected in cash ledger. So capital also collected in capital ledger for reporting purpose. So based on that, master data is designed. So while inputting the information, user is forced to select the master data. We cannot have any non-master data without having master data. So voucher type is master data, and without voucher type, can we just pass on an entry? No, we cannot. So master data, at least one master data is a must. User has to select the master data, then only the non-master data can be typed or selected. So it's a very detailed explanation, but same thing. Bottom line is, master data is permanent, non-master data is relatively not permanent, which is transactional data, and all the other details you can again go through. I hope you are clear with the master data, non-master data by now. Okay. Yesterday we discussed about this similar concept, but more from a control and risk standpoint. Yesterday, in the sense, in the first chapter. But in this particular session for financial and accounting management, we should understand what are the master data and non-master data from financial and accounting perspective. All right. Okay. Now we have entered into a concept about voucher types. I think all this is the very basic information for you. You all know this from your accounting subject. So in accounting language, a voucher is a documentary evidence of a transaction. Simple as that. So different documentary evidences like sales invoice, purchase invoice. There is no point in, because there are hundreds of varieties of documents. Every transaction in accounting, every transaction before it's recorded in the accounting system must be supported by documentary proof. Without that, transaction is null and void. It is against the accounting standards. So in computer language, the word voucher, in computer language, voucher has to, it has a little different meaning. Voucher is a place where transactions are recorded. That's what is computer. Same thing with manual also, right? Voucher type we will file that voucher accordingly. In computer system, Microsoft Excel or maybe another ERP, any other ERP like Tally, we type the voucher type, we select the voucher type and pass the entry. That's how it works. So now I don't have to tell you, you know most of this. And if you don't know, that means you never studied accounting seriously, which I doubt it, because you're all accounting experts. I really respect that. So there is no point in detailing everything here. Different varieties of voucher types are there. Just go through those, refresh your accounting knowledge. If anything is new, you can ask either me or your accounting sir, because this is all accounting stuff. Voucher type, contra. Yeah, I'll also explain if possible or if required. So what is contra? Varieties, cash deposits. Mostly non-automated deposits are contra. Yeah. Or also fund transfer also sometimes, cash fund transfer and all. Payment, as an example, voucher type, payment vouchers, receipt vouchers, journal vouchers. So for recording all non-cash, non-bank transactions like depreciation provision, write off, write back. Does it ring a bell? Basics of accounting. Okay? Alright. You remember this chapter, even though this is in Enterprise Information Systems second chapter, Financial Accounting Systems, this particular topic as of now is totally about basics of accounting. Varieties of vouchers, sales vouchers, purchase vouchers, credit notes, debit notes, memorandum. I think you are experts in this. Some inventory module vouchers like PO, SO, sales order, stock journal, like that. So what is delivery note? Physical delivery of goods sold to a customer. This happened like that. So payroll, attendance definitely is a voucher. Payroll, how many payroll vouchers means? What is a salary paid? What is the total income that a particular individual is getting? Sorry, pay heads, varieties of pay heads, and the salary calculation of the employees. So, and some financial systems, mostly US, instead of the word voucher, voucher is mostly UK in the sense British. But US softwares and US terminology, they use that as document. So illustrative list of some of the voucher types, we just saw that. Only payment voucher type is mentioned because new voucher types are also there. Two different vouchers. There is no limit for creating a voucher type. It is your creativity. Okay. Every country to country voucher types may vary, but there will be some common standardized language called XBRL to standardize the voucher types. I think in the introduction I have mentioned, in the second chapter introduction. XBRL, which is a common accounting language globally. Lot of information systems, lot of software systems in accounting, they use that language as the backbone. So that country to country also voucher types will be similarly used. Okay. So second concept or third concept is voucher number. I think every voucher should have a reference. Voucher number should be there, and voucher number should be in sequence while entering into the system, while we are passing on the entries. I think you know that basic information. One of the audit requirements, whether the voucher types are in sequence or not, very important. So a voucher can be identified using the unique voucher number. It must be unique. Every voucher type shall have a separate numbering series. Different types of series should be there. Let us say such sales order can start with 5. Then stock journal may start with 6, something like that. Every voucher has a different numbering series. 5 means single. 5.1 can be one other series. 5.2 can be other series, like that. It is almost like I would say number plates that we get for our 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers. Similar concept. It is actually in the RTA database, vehicle database, they treat each of these numbers as varieties of voucher types, meaning every district is a different voucher for that. Okay, voucher type. And under each voucher type there would be further series, AB, for example, AB, AC, AD. Once AZ is over, then BA, BC, BD, like that, till CAC, like that it continues. Varieties of vouchers. Systems are same. The way they use the computer systems, where they use is different. But in accounting, this is what is voucher type and voucher number. Every voucher should have a prefix or suffix. General understanding. All vouchers must be numbered serially. This is important. I mentioned multiple times. And all vouchers are recorded in chronological order only, in sequence. Voucher number for payment voucher is 15th. It can be 19th March 2017 cannot be 117 or 118 because it has to be in sequence. Again, these are primary fundamental principles of accounting. So I think you're all experts in it. I would like to say that again. Use your accounting knowledge to read this, study this, pretty easy. In the examination, if a question like this comes, it's bumper offer because you're all very much familiar with these concepts and terminology already. What is accounting flow? It is like explaining something to an expert. You know how it works. Once transactions are done, voucher entry is done, then they post the voucher entries to the system. Balancing happens, trial balance. So humans actually do transactions and voucher entry. Mostly beginning of our articleship, we will be the humans who are entering these two. Transactions actually are done by the customers. and entries are done by the humans like us, and then we'll post it to software. Could be Tally, could be SAP, could be Vandenberg, could be Infor. Varieties of softwares are there. Could be Excel also. Most of our life we will be posting those to Excel, and then balancing may happen and prepare the trial balance. Then P&L account or balance sheet, one of those. So this is again 101, meaning the basics of accounting. So good for you. So in some cases, voucher entry also can be automated. A lot of large organizations are automating that. All the vouchers which are physically presented will be photoed, and that photo will be scanned, and the scan will go as an automated voucher. So some organizations are doing it already. Large organizations, global organizations are doing it so that they can reduce the human intervention. Okay. This is again types of ledgers. I think you know much better than me or anyone else. You're all the experts here. This is accounting, right? Again, 3 types of ledger accounts: personal, real and nominal. But financial accounting systems, it is different. In accounting generally we would have studied this, but in F&A, financial systems, so debit balance and credit balance, simple way. 2 types of ledgers here, debit balance and credit balance. Debit balance has definitely assets and expenses. Credit balance has income and liability. And when you generate the reports, P&L, it will take income and expense. Balance sheet uses liability and asset. Again, I don't want to go to the details of accounting because you have been studying it for past almost 2 years plus in chartered accountancy course itself, around 2 years, 1.5 years if not. So basic concepts of accounting are explained here. Probably ICAI has designed this syllabus for those of us who studied science even at a graduation level, and when they come directly to CA Inter, for them this is really important. So just to understand that basic concepts again. So objectives of accounting software is to generate 2 primary accounting reports, P&L and balance sheet, and you can do that. So assets, what are assets, what are expenses, you know that. What is income, what is liability, also you know that. So I don't have to explain it explicitly. Income and expense ledgers or P&L, assets and liability, balance sheet. I think we saw this again. Just to reiterate, it's a very nice diagram for those of us who know accounting, how it works. Okay, so very efficiently kept as a flow chart. How to group these ledgers? So at the time of creation of any ledger, it must be placed under a particular group. There are 4 basic groups in accounting: income, expense, asset and liability. Our life will be done. Actually our future, if we would like to be in accounting, these 4 words are our future: income, expense, asset and liability. If we know where to pass the entry, which head, which ledger we should pass the entry, which group we should pass, I think we are experts in accounting. As simple as that. But that's where the common sense we should use. That's why accounting seems to be, it is not a science. If it is a science, we should easily segregate these things. What is an asset, what is a base, what is a convex lens, what is a concave lens, this is all pretty straightforward. But why accounting is not? Because it is not just science, it is art. There must be some creativity, there must be some substantiation. What we feel correct in India may be exactly otherwise in US, may be done differently in Australia. So that's how accounting softwares are also developed. So we need to understand that. But overall, these are the 4. So he gives an example, interesting example. Cash ledger is an asset ledger and should be shown under current assets in balance sheet, of course. However, if we group cash ledger under indirect expenses, it should be displayed under profit and loss account as expenditure. So software cannot prevent incorrect grouping of ledger. So that's why human input is really important for software also, because software cannot think. Whatever we give as an input, whatever process we have designed using the flow chart, that process goes as a final product. So our logic should be correct. If the logic is not correct, output also will be bad. As simple as that. Okay. So these are basic accounting concepts, my friends. I know we have spent reasonable time on this, but just go through that again, just refresh your basics. If any question is given till here, oh, it's a jackpot, because we know most of these concepts very easily. All right, we know this. Now we'll come to technical concepts. Probably few new terminology, new aspects of terminology will come into this picture. Okay, so the basic aspect of any system, the basic the basic concept as for any system or any software is, any user types something to the front end. What is front end? The browser in case of internet, the window in case of non-internet but in front of us, and it talks to back end, and then it shows something back to front end and user gets it. So this is a cycle. The basic concepts of any system in terms of customer interaction is this software. What is front end? It's a part of, note it down in your notebook. What is front end and back end? Front end is a part of the overall software which actually interacts with the user who is using the software. Let us say we are using an application. Let us say we are using a web app and we have clicked on something. Where did we click? Directly, did we go to the software program and click it? No, we have clicked it on a screen in front of us. That is a user interface, that is front end. But actually what is happening? Our click is taking that request by using a network, whether it is wireless or wireline, it reaches to a server which is the back end. The back end actually does not directly interact with the user. Is it not? Can we directly enter into the database and update the database? If we have that option, we will update our account balance in our savings account in bank. We will update our marks in ICA database. Why can't we update? Because front end is where user can interact. Back end definitely is user cannot interact, because front end has to talk to back end, not a user. I think we know that, but a little more explanation. Similarly, if a user wants to have some information from the system, let us say balance sheet. So user will look at front end goes to the back end processes the data and posts it back to front end, and user looks at the data again. Same here, right? User sends by using the front end, sends a request to back end processes and sends it to front end again is accessed by user. If further questions, further click, further typing, this is a cycle till user is satisfied with the data what user wants. Okay, it's almost like kitchen, right? So customer orders for some food, maybe some I don't know, chicken biryani is coming to my mind, but yeah, something. Recently a general topic, Swiggy as an application, it is pan India, right? It is almost into 2-tier, 3-tier cities also now. Can you believe they have conducted not a survey, but they have taken all their data and analyzed and all that. You know what is the first and largest order for them entire India? What food item? You will be surprised. Chicken biryani. Maybe because of that it is coming to my mind, I don't know, but that's how it is. So customer ordered for something. In case of a physical hotel, a waiter will take the order. Waiter goes back to the cook or the back end work on it, and they will give to the waiter, and waiter gives back to the customer. The same thing with the computer systems also, if you look at. Just it is an illustrative situation, okay? Yeah. Why we should have separate front end and back end systems? Why can't we have the cook in front of us, and why don't we directly go to the cook and ask what to be cooked? Why don't we look at how the cook is cooking food? Yeah, that is possible in some restaurants. Those are called open kitchen restaurants. I have experienced those in Mongolia, in Hong Kong, and then some of the Mongolian varieties. You know what they do? The kitchen is in front of you. You can directly walk into. Actually, the hotel itself is kitchen. We walk there. Our chairs are around the kitchenette, and we can go to the cook. We can ask, multiple cooks are there. We can choose one cook, and we can work with the cook whatever and however stuff we want. That is very rare. None of the systems work like that. Always there is a front end, always there is a back end separate. Similarly, why it has to be different in software? Because front end and back end, we can understand. Number one, domain expertise. Front end handling the requests, but it cannot process the request, right? It will pass on the request to back end. Same here, waiter cannot cook food. There must be a separate cook. Similarly, presentation. Waiter can present very good. The front end may have good colors, graphics, drop down boxes, or animes, animated emojis. Sorry, not animes, emojis, something like that. Front end software definitely has to be more interactive, presentation wise. Cook doesn't care, it has to be tasty. Same with back end also. The information what we want, database has to provide. Whether it is provided in a beautiful tabular format, it doesn't care. That is all done by front end. Okay. And then user experience. User should be very good in terms of, or should feel good when they look at the data. And speed. So naturally customer expects a quick delivery of food. So if software, it is, it has to be quick. Waiter has to take the order quick. And if we separate the front end and back end, naturally the pressure for back end also will reduce. Front end will have its own time to interact with the customer, and back end also parallelly can work. So separate back end and front end softwares. They will use different purposes. Back end handles the software. Back end software handles the data. So this reduces the load and increases the speed of operations. That's why these two are separated. This can be a very good question. What is front end and back end? And explain with example about front end and back end. So we can just try to pick an example like cook and waiter and hotel situation. But what we should know, these things we should remember. So note down in your book. Why front end and back end are separated? This is a technical aspect, but in general with examples we have explained. Why front end and back end are separated? Why separate front end and back end softwares? So domain expertise, presentation, user experience, speed, and language also. Database may have a different language, but waiter, see, cook may speak in whatever language, but cook has to prepare food. But ultimately waiter has to speak our language, otherwise we will not understand what waiter is talking and whether the waiter is taking correct order or not. Similarly, front end software should be user friendly, and the language has to be in according to user's requirement. But back end, like database can be in any language, but data should come back again and presented in the format of the user. So language, so these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different or 5 or 6 different concepts. For reasons why front end and back end are separated. I hope you have noted down at least these 5 bullet points in your notebook. You should do that. Okay? Alright. So in the in Charms material also I have mentioned the bullet points. What are the bullet points? Domain expertise, presentation, user experience, speed, language. Just as an example, think about waiter, cook and a hotel situation. Easily you can understand. Okay? Alright. Now we are getting a little more deeper into the technical aspects of software, so-called applications, so-called information systems. What is software? Software is into multiple varieties. The first thing what we discuss about software is called application software. Application software is nothing but application software performs many functions such as receiving the inputs from user, interprets the instructions, and performs logical functions so that output can come. Examples: Microsoft applications, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. These are all softwares. Like ERP, like SAP. ERP means Enterprise Resource Planning Systems. Application software like Oracle Financials, MFG Pro. These are some examples. You don't have to mug it. Any software what we use is an application software, because application software is for accepting the inputs from users and interpreting the instructions and performing the logical functions. These are the three aspects. So any application, any software has three different layers. Three layers, which is application layer, operating system layer, database layer. AOD. This is called three-tier architecture. Application layer. This is you should note it down. Even though it is in the material, as our CHAMS material, this is a very important concept. Application layer, operating system layer, database layer. What is application layer? We'll discuss about that. Application layer is receiving the inputs from the users and perform certain validations, whether authorization and all that. Let us say we are entering into CI.org, BOS portal, which is students, and looking into syllabus. That is an application layer in front of us. Why? Because user is using that. It is a front end. Application layer generally is. It has some logic, but it is mostly front end. What is the operating system layer? It carries these instructions and processes them to data stored in the database. That means it is a postman or postwoman. Operating system is a postwoman or postman. What does a postman does? Postman does not create the post. Postman does not write the post. Postman does not request the post. But postman goes to the destination, gives the instruction to the destination. In case of postman, there is not reciprocation. There is nothing else to give back. But in case of software, operating system software, you know what it is? What it does? The operating system receives the instructions from application software, and the application software tries to send the signals to operating system, OS, operating system, like Windows 10, Windows 9 or iOS. In case of mobiles it is Android or maybe BlackBerry. What do? Our input click, input selection, the operating system translates and gives it back to database layer. The database layer is at the back end. That's where the actual data is stored. Most of the application software is built, this is in this model only. So three-layered architecture. Have you heard about that now? Important to understand. This can be a good question. What is a three-layered architecture? AOD. Write it down in your notebook. Three-layered architecture. How to remember? AOD. Application layer, operating system layer, database layer. So front end and some activities by user, application layer. Translation to hardware, how the hardware handles and understands the instruction, operating system. And once the hardware understands that, it will send the data request goes to database. Don't think that database is hardware. Database is software only. But this is how any application software can be developed. Three-layered approach, three-tier approach. This is called three-tier architecture. Just like railway reservation, we have three-tier AC. What is three-tier AC? There will be three layers. Bottommost layer, middle layer, top layer. Of course, we cannot directly link this there. The top layer is application layer where user can talk. The middle layer is the operating system layer. The bottommost layer is database layer. This is how we can remember this. I hope you understand the analogy. Okay? Alright. Moving on, within the application software, the first one is three-tier architecture. The second concept is, these are all individual concepts, no direct interrelation. Of course, these are all concepts related to installed applications versus cloud-based applications. Let us say you want to use Microsoft PowerPoint. Do we need to connect to a network and access a cloud? No, we don't have to. So where is that application stored? In your PC, in your laptop or desktop. But if you would like to use an email, where is that email, your previous emails, those are stored? Are those stored in your machine, in your phone, in your laptop? No. Sorry, those are all stored generally in a cloud. Where is that cloud? We don't know. It is not installed. It is connected. It is being connected. So there is a variety. It's a new technology. New in the sense for the past 5 years or maybe 10 years. So installed applications which are mostly installed on your program, hard disk of the computer. Whereas cloud applications are nothing but web applications. These are not installed. We use a web server and then access using a browser and the internet connection. So from a technology standpoint, internet connectivity, this has improved the cloud systems. That's why web-based applications are 99.99% of all e-commerce applications are web-based applications only. Why? Because those are all based on cloud. Okay. There is in chapter 3 or 4, I don't remember, but we will talk more in detail about cloud applications, varieties of clouds and all that. Don't get confused here itself. So some of the common cloud they have said SaaS, software as a service, IaaS, infrastructure as a service, how does it work and all, we will discuss in that chapter. But as of now, we should know what is the difference between installed application versus cloud application. At least once or twice this question was asked. That's why in chapter 4 also it is there. That's what it's mentioning. So installed application versus cloud application. Install application, it is installed on our machine. So what is the characteristic of installed application? Software is installed on our hard disk. It needs to be installed on every computer one by one. If an organization has 1,000 computers, 1,000 employees, and if we are installing based on installed application on every machine, then it is a huge nightmare. But what about cloud-based application? We should provide access to the cloud to all 1,000 people. Enough. We don't have to install. Easy to maintain. Accessibility. In the hard disk, only one person can access. But in cloud, millions can access. It can be used 24/7. So I think I gave the glimpse of it so you can read through. And then mobile application. Using software through mobile application is difficult in this case, but web applications, very easy in terms of cloud. Data storage, data is physically stored in our hard disk, so it takes a lot of security issues. If the phone is lost, if the desktop or laptop is lost, all the data is lost in installed application. But in cloud, nothing in our machine, it is all a dummy machine. Why? Everything is depending on user ID and password to the cloud. So, okay, risk is there, but still data storage is not on the physical device, it is somewhere else. So, based on some service level agreements, the rights, responsibilities and all that, the data will be stored there. How about data security, where it is more? Actually, data security is more on the installed application, because if we have very strong user ID and password, so and also we keep our data very safe, or the machine very safe, almost impossible for anyone else outside to hack us. Data security is think about it, when we are not interconnected, when there is no internet, we are working only on our laptop or desktop and saving all our information there. Can anyone else log in there? No. Can anyone else hack in there? No. So data security is more on installed applications. This can be a one answer, one mark bit. Installed applications, security is more, whereas web application security is always a challenge. Of course, it is very flexible and everyone is using it, but still it is very much challenging. And few more concepts. Performance. Well written installed application always will be faster because it doesn't need internet. But in case of web-based application, cloud-based application, it all depends on the internet speed. If it is 3G, it's okay, slow. If it is 4G, reasonably okay. If it is 5G, even more. If it is a cable, wow, split second we can complete. So it is not about the application, right? It is about the network speed. So performance is always better in installed applications. It is better in installed applications. Again, remember that. And logically understand why it is better in installed applications, because there is no network needed. It is on our machine only. Very easy to access and fast to respond. Flexibility. Installed application has more flexibility. Why? Because we can easily write those and we can delete those, we can install those. It's all in our hand. That's the reason why installed applications are very much flexible. But there is a disadvantage. What is that? Installed applications are because we have to purchase those, we have to install those in all the computers. So in budgeting aspect, it comes under capex, capital expenditure, which requires a lot of approval and heavy also. Whereas what is cloud? Generally, as an introduction, cloud is nothing but a rental place. We don't have to own it. We'll just the rental fee for that, either monthly or weekly or annual or pay per use also. Sometimes how long we will use, we can pay. So varieties of schemes are there. Installment basis. Cloud is nothing but a Shamiana shop. We will talk more and more about that. So what happens? Let us say we are conducting a marriage. Are we going to buy all the chairs required for marriage? No, we'll just rent a marriage place. Why? Because they will rent the chairs to us. We don't have to buy those. Installed applications in our own house. Let us say if we have to conduct marriage, there also we have to procure chairs, but we have to buy the chairs. Difference between cloud and installed application. Installed application, it is our own house. Cloud means we are renting it from someone else. So when it is our own house, capital expenditure is more because the expenses are booked under capital expense in the accounting. But when we rent it, it is only for that instance, for that month. So it is expense. Hence, it is operating expense, which is relatively easy for approvals and also less. So cloud applications are less expensive. Installed applications are more expensive. So like that, these 6 or 7 points we can understand. Installed and cloud based applications. Okay. I think I have mentioned this here. Very simple, the bullet points. What are the important points? Installation and maintenance, which is easy. Cloud is easy. Why? Installation and maintenance. Every computer we don't have to install, right? That is easy in terms of cloud. We can rent it. Accessibility, data storage, data security, performance, flexibility. So these are the aspects that we can prepare. So this is another concept. What is the difference, major difference between installed and web applications? So this can be a good theoretical 4-mark question. All right. Okay. So with that, maybe we will just put a temporary stop here for this session. Why? Because we will enter into integrated, non-integrated stuff, how the systems are integrated one to other and all that. Okay. So we'll put a stop here. Please go through the ICA material as well as CHAMPS material. CHAMPS material is mostly the highlights the requirements at a bullet point level as a quick ready reckoner. So this is good. So please go through that. While you are preparing for this, if any questions are there, please don't hesitate. And you can pose your questions to our common WhatsApp group. We will respond back. Alright? Till we meet next time. Thank you very much. Bye.